Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Breaking into Cybersecurity. I am here. I'm Renee Brown Small, and I'm here with my fabulous co-host, Chris Foulon. Say hi to the people, Chris.
Hi everyone, miss you guys.
And I'm also here with our amazing guest for today, Charlie Germano. Say hi to everyone, Charlie.
Hello to everyone.
So we are here. First of all, it's my birthday. Happy birthday to
Happy
me.
birthday,
Happy
Renee.
birthday.
That's why I'm in t-shirts and doing what I feel like doing, going rogue. Secondly, Charlie has such an amazing background. He's been in IT since the 90s. I was a 90s. I came out. I guess came out is the wrong word, but I've been around since the 90s as well. Even though you might not think I am. Um, and so I am excited to hear. Both of us are excited to hear about Charlie and his background and coming from IT when nobody quite knew what cybersecurity was when it was the baby. And he is going to walk us through how he broke into the industry and how, Charlie, just tell us how you got from IT to where you are today as a director in of cybersecurity.
Yeah. So thanks, Renee. So yeah, like you said, my first job in programming, I was 21 years old. I still remember the day, February 5th, 1990. I was a company in Denver, Colorado. It was a subsidiary of United Airlines, and so we got to fly around a lot. But there were mainframes, and that's what there were in the world. It's hard to believe, but people would ask me what I do for a living, and I was a 21-year-old. It was more than a little awkward. I was the kid in Ready Player One, right? I played Dungeons and Dragons. I did like the whole thing, and I would say I'm a computer programmer, and 100 times out of 100, the next question was, "What's that?" And I would always stumble into some incredibly awkward explanation. Well, there's ones and zeros, and if the data looks like this, then you do that, and I would get blank stares. And so after a while, I just started saying, you know what, I'm an accountant, because nobody ever asked, what does an accountant do? I never had to explain anything. It was awesome. Like, you just moved on. So
That's hilarious.
yeah, so the 90s were, there were it was an interesting time in technology, because most of the people that he worked with came from business. They did not have computer science backgrounds. They came from, the people that when I worked with airlines, they were gate agents, they were ticket agents, they were reservation agents, and they knew the business process. And typically they were kind of, the smart ones on the team, and people would say, "Hey, we've got these big computers in the back, will you help fix them?" And be like, I guess, sure. So most people, until about the late 90s, kind of came into IT by accident. The late 90s, IT became respectable, right? We had the dot-com boom. I did a lot of web development. Time went on. The dot-coms crashed. They came back, right? And during that time, I had a lot of different roles in a lot of different industries. I was a DBA. I was a program manager. I was a manager. Did a whole bunch. I built satellites, a whole bunch of different things. Um, and I guess maybe 5 years ago or so, um, kind of got interested in the security space, because it felt like, and I was a lead architect at a big company. Development was kind of becoming a commodity. It's strange to say, but you can build a perfectly functional application today knowing very little about code, right? Just downloading off the open source components, or kind of plugging them in. Um, but the security aspect, nobody was really thinking about. So I actually went back to school. I got a minor in cybersecurity, and it really wasn't until the Equifax breach that kind of opened my eyes to the, I'm going to use the word crisis, and I'm not even being flip, that security was, right? Because Equifax happened, and the big societal not we in IT, we found the typical boogeymen, right? Oh, Equifax, big company, bad, right? Open source component, bad, right? Oh, sysadmin didn't patch the thing, bad, right? And fine. But a couple of days later, Apache had they issued a press release that not many people read, but it was brilliant, really. So and if you're listening, Apache, good, right? Open source, good. Don't be afraid of open source. It's all good stuff. And what they said was, yes, there was a vulnerability. Yes, it wasn't patched, but and you kind of had to read between the lines. Why would you ever allow this component unfettered access to your backend resources? You implement security in layers, and I read that. I was like, well, of course you do. And then I was like, well, does not everybody know that? And so I just kind of started kicking around a little bit, and I looked at computer science programs at schools you've all heard of, right? And I'm not going to throw any under the bus, but I invite you, look at any technical school, liberal arts school, at any, and look at the requirements for a computer science degree and tell me how many security classes are required. And I will bet you every nickel in my pocket that the answer you'll find is zero. So we have all of these brilliant developers going through computer science school, learning all the amazing potential that technology has, and not really learning how to secure them. And if that doesn't scare you, then I don't really have a follow up to that. So so really within a couple of months, I started kind of peeking around at different roles. The truth was, I kind of stumbled into cyber as a job. I kind of was at a point in my life where I wanted to do something good for the world with whatever skills I had. So I was applying for nonprofits like where I am now at Save the Children, and I actually applied for a different role. And my resume, I got a call back, and I was having a conversation with the CIO, and he said, I see you've applied for this role for technology for development, which is all great, but have you thought about this cyber role? And I was like, actually, let's talk about it. So kind of here I am. Whoops, that was a long 30-year kind of journey through a lot of technical background, and the opportunity kind of presented itself. But for anybody listening that's trying to break in, be prepared when that opportunity comes. So that's how I got here.
Wow, that's a long, varied background, but I'll ask the one question that was on top of my mind. For those that have that long, varied background, how do you think that prepared you for your security role? Did you always have security in mind, or now that you look back at it, you start seeing all the things that you might have been doing wrong in the past that could have had security built in way back then?
So, yeah, great question. So yeah, depending on what environment you come from, I've worked at companies with 130,000 people, and I've worked at companies where 13 people. So security. Oh no, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I can hear you.
No,
but,
I think we lost Charlie.
Oh no,
I can hear him.
Okay.
Oh.
So a couple of roles that I've had as an architect, we've done things like stood up, service-oriented infrastructure, right? And when you do that, security plays a prominent role. So I got exposed to security on that level, probably, I don't know, 10 or 15 years ago, doing that for a large hotel company you've heard of. So security as part of the development process has been, part of my world for, since about 2006, to be honest with you. But as far as actually in the operations space, it's, I'm fairly new to it.
Yeah. Additionally, I was thinking as you were walking through your background that there's so many mid-career changes right now. Most of the outreach that I think Chris and I both get are from people that are just like you. They were, they've had long careers. They've had different backgrounds in IT, and all of those things prepare you for. So someone like you coming in is different, brings definitely a different perspective because you've had all of that IT experience in the past. So I guess my question to you is, what would you share with the mid-career first folks? Some of them are really struggling. They did like you, they went back to school, they went and got their degrees, and they're struggling to break in. What would you tell them to, like you said, be prepared, but what does that mean? Be prepared when it comes, right? When opportunity arises.
Right. I mean, part of it is building your network, right? I mean, you got to do the thing, whether that's, if you have the ability to show up at conferences, and not all of them cost money, right? I mean, B-Sides does great stuff, right? It's it's very cheap. They're all over the country, so you don't have to travel. But I think one of the most interesting pieces of advice I've seen on this. Chad Loader, he was a founder of Rapid7. He's now founder of a company called Habituate. Is doing really cool stuff with with cyber training, and he's got a really fun Twitter feed. So if you're on Twitter, follow Chad. But he tweeted just the other day. He said, if you want to break into cyber, try a year at the help desk. Spend a year at the IT help desk, because you will really, really know what your users' struggles are, and that is a tremendous value. I mean, understanding how people use the tools you give them, it gives you a huge leg up on anyone else that's going to come in and apply to that role. And I'm going to go back to what I was saying a couple minutes ago about how in the old days, I'm doing my old guy thing, right? But when developers typically, or everyone in technology typically came from the business side and understood the problems they were trying to solve, being at the help desk, no better way to know what problems you're trying to solve than sitting at the help desk for a year and listening to users. And I'll tell you, as someone who manages a help desk, you will see people at their absolute worst, because by the time they get to you, they're already frustrated. Things are broken. They just want it to work. And you will learn trial by fire at the help desk better than anything else I can tell you. So, yeah, highly recommend.
That's the whole world.
Yeah, I'd say been there, done that. That's how
yeah.
I came up. Question for you. So you mentioned that you're a programmer. You have a lot of that in your background. Do you think now that you have the security hat on, you can better speak to individuals in that area because you knew what it was to be there, as well as now how they can start to think about coding securely or implementing security technologies to validate their code in the CI/CD pipeline, things like that?
Yeah, absolutely. For too long, we as a development community, and I say this with love to my fellow developers. You guys don't take it personally, right? But security was somebody else's job, right? I mean, just user ID, password, fine. Don't bother me. I got a deadline that sales has already committed me to, right? And now that is starting to shift, mainly because you saw British Airways a couple days ago got hit with what, 180 million pound fine. That's gonna wake some people up, right? I mean, that's a lot of money. Marriott is fighting their fine right now, but it's a lot of money. So, unfortunately, it's come to that where to kind of bring that awareness to the front. But for any of us who look at a Splunk log on any kind of regular basis, you see the attacks, you see where they're coming from. I don't think anybody would tell you that the things you read about as far as nation state hackers or just general scoundrels, it's fiction. I mean, these things are happening. So, I think the visibility has finally gotten to where it needs to be, and it's certainly visible to the board. I feel like 5 years ago, people on your board of directors may not have gotten this. Today they get this. They get it.
What would you say? You went back to school, and you got a minor. You did a minor in cyber. What was the major?
Organizational leadership.
Okay. Oh, cool. What would you recommend when you look at people to hire in the cybersecurity space, and a lot of folks, they get the certifications, they go back, they ask what degree should they get, what cert should they get? What do you think is a good combination of certifications and or degrees, or not, or just going on Cybrary or whatever and learning the skill? What would you recommend?
I like to see results, right? The degrees are great, the certs are great. I'm not taking anything away from them, but if you can show me that you learned a technology and you can articulate why you learned it and what benefit your organization gained from it and how you used it, that speaks more to me than CISSP does.
Any recommendations for those individuals that are looking to do that mid-career shift or looking to now update their resume to show those results, like what would you look for in a resume to see that?
Especially for someone who hasn't, because we all need that first break, right? It's the first break. Do something in open source, right? You know, buyyourname.com, right? Like just go, to Namecheap and reserve your domain and set something up yourself and explain how it works, right? And you can do this without a lot of money. This does not take a lot of money, but it does take time and it does take effort. And that I think is what I look for, somebody who doesn't come into technology just for a job, because it is now, right? This is before technology became an industry unto itself. The people that were in it because they loved it, right? So do you love it enough to wake up on a Saturday morning and say, oh my God, I got a great idea, this is going to be so cool, and go and build something? This is not an industry for someone who wants a 9-to-5 job. It's not an industry for someone who wants to learn something and say, got it, I'm done, now I have a job for the rest of my life. If you don't learn something new in technology every single day, if you can't spend an hour every single day, I say this with love, don't work in a bank. This is not the field for you. This is not it. This is not.
Hopefully not banking security.
Oh, but Bitcoin's going to solve it all, right?
Such valid points. I mean, Chris and I hear this all the time, and we preach it, but we like to hear the hiring managers, the folks that are doing the hiring, tell folks. I say all the time, experience trumps everything. We know that in some agencies, like, we're all in the DC metro area. So yes, you have to have a certification to get in a lot of these agency roles. Yeah. But a lot of the ones that are, and even with that cert, if it's your resume against resume B, the second person's resume or the second person's interview, and you have the certification and you've done exactly what Charlie, you just said, versus the person with the certification that hasn't done that, person A is going to win every single time. Yeah. And I think what tends to happen is, I've heard this before, that the hiring managers are even more impressed with people who are self-driven, who really truly have the passion, who they know it's not, like you said, it's not a 9-to-5 job. Oh, I went to school, like, this new industry is cool. So, and I saw on a billboard or whatever that I can make a lot of money. So yeah, I'm going to go in and get my $100,000 job and what have you. It's the people who are doing this day in and day out that, would do it if they weren't getting paid to do it. Yeah. And that's when you see that passion. You see, like, hey, this is what I'm doing in my free time. And that is what tips the scale when moving into a new role or, potentially getting a new opportunity.
Yeah. And, that's perfect. I mean, for those of you who live in DC, there are a lot of nonprofits in Washington, DC, right? And there are a lot of nonprofits everywhere, but I live in DC. So, and they would love help. If you have any experience and interest in helping someone and just to expand your resume and say, oh, look, I built this for something. I guarantee there are 8,000 nonprofits located in this town alone. If you say to any of them, hey, do you need IT help? All of them will say yes, right? And you'll get the exposure and the experience. Say, look, I built this website, right? And look, and now it's it advertises for full moon walks or whatever. That's one of the ones I do, right? No, seriously. So there's lots of opportunities to do this, on your own time, and more than just in your own backyard. You can actually get out in your community and build your network at the same time. Also, yeah, very important.
Yeah. I think one of our guests that we had on here talked about, she's part of the CERT team. She's part of like a volunteer incident response team. I can't remember one of the guests, but again, back to that volunteering in either a nonprofit or the industry to get that experience. Chris, I cut you off, sorry.
No. So you mentioned conferences, you mentioned building stuff on your own. You mentioned volunteering for charities. What about if you're already in a role at a company? Have you ever worked on any cross-functional teams that had a security project to show your worth and to build up your experience that way?
We do that here. I've never worked at another place that did this, but where I am now, we do the kind of internal TDYs, right? And say, oh, I'm actually interested in what this team is doing. I'm going to go spend 6 weeks, half my time working with them, and it's really cool. We just had someone from a completely different department outside of IT say, I want to learn how to be a business analyst. Like, all right, come on in. So really valuable, and we got a cool different perspective of someone who was actually using our tools, and she got kind of a bird's eye view into the world of IT operations. Hopefully it wouldn't scare her too much, but yeah, that's something that I'd never seen before, but I'm starting to see more and more of that happening. It's great stuff. So if you're lucky enough to work in an organization, definitely take advantage of that.
Have you ever in your past, similar to that same theme, saw a deficiency in an organization and went out and took the initiative to create a proposal or create a project around solving that deficiency to show that you're interested in a certain area?
Have I personally, or have yeah, kind of all the time. I'm trying to think of well, because oh gosh, we I did a lot of modernization, right? From so part of in a couple of my roles involved taking what was like a legacy mainframe background and modernize it. And you can't do that in one shot, right? You have to do that incrementally, because if you look at people who have tried to just take their old systems, throw them away, and replace them with something new and shiny, they all fail. They cost 10 times more than they take 10 times long. So so what you get with that is you have to work in both this new world and old world. So so I, at a couple companies ago, I think, proposed creating some tools that would automate a lot of the things that that in a mainframe world you would have to do manually. So anything that you can explain will increase efficiency with an organization, and say, look, right now we do all this manually, or we can build or buy a tool that will automate that, and we're going to speed ourselves up 10 times. Organizations are all about efficiency. So so you take that to anyone internally, and if you can show that you're going to make people more efficient, that's going to go places.
Awesome. Well, we are actually at the half an hour mark.
Okay.
It's super fast. Chris usually asks our final question. So Chris, you want to jump in?
So for mid-career transition individuals, because I think that's where your advice and your experience comes in the best. If you had to give one piece of sage advice, what would you give them in their transition?
Just one, huh?
Executive summary.
Yeah. Understand the problems you're trying to solve, really. And that goes beyond IT. You can't solve a problem if you don't understand what the problem is. So I think that's the biggest one. Everything else follows that.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, this has been a lot of fun. Thanks, you guys.
Thanks, Charlie. Thanks, Chris. And we will see everyone next time on the Breaking Into Cybersecurity podcast. All right.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.